yuck, you don't really want to write them down. You wake up, you think, oh, what was that? That was so weird. But actually, God is saying something really powerful through these dreams. So tell me, what would constitute a DWD dream? We've called them DWD dreams, dark, weird, and difficult. So it's to coin a phrase that we were like, oh, how do we talk about these dreams? Well, let's call them DWD dreams.
Yeah, dark, weird, and difficult. I think possibly, like, for me, the best way to define that is kind of just what you were talking about. I mean, you can define it in sort of two ways. One is you can sort of technically and objectively define it, and we'll talk about that. What makes it, in an objective sense, a dark, weird, or difficult dream. But probably the easiest way to identify one is from your experience of it, and that I've had to struggle with this over the last couple of years. It's usually you wake up, you remember the dream, and you remember what the dream is about, right? You remember the content, you remember what happened in the dream, but there's like there's a feeling of revulsion or disgust at the dream. There could be a feeling of like it makes you feel dirty or ashamed when you think about the dream. And so because the dream keys into those emotions, it makes us not want to have anything to do with it. It's a bit like our aversion to, I mean, disgust is a kind of a safety mechanism to stop us. Well, part of what it does is it's a safety mechanism to stop us eating rotten food. You know, when you smell something that's like, oh, that's disgusting, and it looks like food, but it's not. So we have this inbuilt mechanism to not engage with it, and the dream feels that way. But because it's just a natural response to something that is difficult to deal with. But the difficult to deal with things is often where there's gold, and that's what I've found. So I found the first thing I had to do is go, I just have to write this down, even if I can't do anything else. And then it starts to unpack, and I can see the value in it, and I can see what God's trying to do through that difficult experience.
And a lot of people kind of go, oh, not all dreams are from God. I'm just going to put that dream there somewhere, and I'm not going to engage with it. But can I just say, how do you know if it's from God or not from God? So you will not know. And many times we've had dreams and they've been difficult, and I've thought, oh, I don't really want to write that down. It's dealing with difficult things. I've woken up feeling headachy, or which is often a sign that there's an attack of the enemy that's come up against you if you wake up with a headache. Or you wake up and you're foggy and fuzzy. You get a foggy head. It's foggy brain, and that often will indicate like the enemies come and try to attack you. But the thing to do is not to go, well, was that from God? And then discard it. If you say, oh no, it was difficult, so I'm not going to listen to it, and what I'm going to do is just forget about it because it was difficult to deal with. But you and I have often felt, when we've been good stewards of the things that we feel God could be saying, that we have said, if there's even a nugget of God in this, if we will write it down and we will honor it and we will steward it correctly. Yeah. So the important thing is that you don't say, oh, is this dream from God or not from God? Because there are many instances in the Bible where a deep terror has, like that dream where Abraham fell into a deep terror, or a deep, what was the word used over him? It was obviously a difficult dream, and it was God showing him something that was going to happen in the future of Israel, that they would be taken into Egypt, and that they would be in captivity for 400 years. And so this terror falls. He falls asleep. It's where he cuts the covenant with God to become, the people of God. But he falls into a sleep, and God actually shows him in this dream. Now, if he just discarded that dream and said, "Oh, that was a weird dream. I don't know if I want to believe all those difficult things are going to happen to my descendants," then he would have missed something that God was trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with that. That's and that's a good metaphor in a way for exactly the way we can deal with difficult dreams. It's like, well, I don't want to face up to the content of that, which is I've been promised a land, but now God's saying that, well, actually it's going to take 400 years and I'm going to bring your people back to that land. Well, that's not good news. I don't like that content.
Well, that's not God.
That's not God, you know. Or else, like, well, the dream was terrifying, and that's not from God, because I don't like the content and I don't like the emotion associated with it. So we've talked about this quite a lot, and the meaning of the dream and the way that the Holy Spirit convicts you about what the dream means and what God may be saying through it is the way to tell where the dream is from. And truthfully, I haven't seen a dream which God has been absent from. You might have a terrible dream about things which is designed to instill fear in you and fear about the future, but if that is the enemy and his plans for you and you haven't seen that come to pass yet, then he would be a fool to reveal his plans to you, because then you can start praying against them. So is God absent from that? No, he's not.
No.
Because you can completely avoid the enemy's plans for you if you know what they are. You think about two armies at war with each other. If one knows the plans of the other, it gives them a massive advantage. And they would be foolish to just ignore the plans of their enemy because they look difficult, or that would be a tough attack, right?
And an interesting thing we've been talking about recently is I feel like God's bringing revelations through dreams back to the church. Now, there was a period, and I think what we'll do is we'll actually do this as a video recording after the session, is dreams and the early church. And there's a really interesting story. There's a dissertation we were reading from a guy who was at the University of
St Andrews in Scotland, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
And he'd actually written about dreams and the early church fathers and dreams, and it was such an interesting dissertation. And he goes through a few scriptures, but you'd done some research on the early church and how they had initially engaged with dreams and the prophetic and the move of the Spirit, but then something had happened. So,
but suffice to say, one of the reasons that dreams and dream interpretation stopped, one of them, and it's germane to this session, is that it all got too dark, weird and difficult, and it was difficult to handle with it and be consistent about it. So that's one of the reasons why the early church as a whole stopped dream interpretation, and it can be one of the reasons why we stopped dream interpretation. So
Yeah.
it's quite relevant in that sense.